Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Barb Shelly, and I am a journalist in Kansas City, and I do a lot of reporting and editing on education issues.
Welcome to TranScript, where we talk about trans issues in education.
I'm your host, Gene Johnson, former superintendent in the Shawnee Mission School District in Kansas.
And I'm Brad Tennant, longtime math teacher in Kansas, and today on TranScript, we'll hear how education reporting has changed and how the media covers trans issues.
Barb, has politics and education reporting changed over trans issues?
I think it definitely has. I think basically what we're talking about is a whole new level of consciousness in reporting that began definitely within the last decade. I might even say 5 to 7 years ago, really, and has been evolving ever since. And the best kind of education reporting is student-centered. You don't want to just assume you know what students want or what's good for students. Education reporters who are good at their jobs, they want to connect with students.
Right.
And that would mean all kinds of students. And that would mean that level of consciousness that I talked about is, being aware that, in every classroom there are transgender students. I don't know about every classroom, but
I think it's probably safe to say. Sure.
They're there.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
But they are there. They're there, and they are part of your reporting. They are part of the landscape of their school. They are someone that you work to connect with.
We've been through the the gay, the lesbian, the same-sex marriage. We've
Right.
done the gamut, and now we're trans is kind of at the top of the level now. Do you see the same type of potential acceptance with trans that we've kind of seen with the others over time?
Honestly, I don't see why not. Unless the adults get in the way, quite frankly. But I think we've seen, and your background is in Shawnee Mission, and I'm always heartened to see the Shawnee Mission students and how they've come out in defense of their LGBTQ classmates as they become more aware that some of their classmates are transgender. And what that means, that you'll see growing acceptance. Mm-hmm. As I say, unless the adults get in the way. And
what about Johnson County as a whole?
It's interesting that you ask about Johnson County, where the school districts, are more affluent than some others in the region. And we talk about these issues in Johnson County, and that may be that they rise to the forefront there more so than in Kansas City Public Schools, KCKPS, some of the other districts where they're, the overriding issues have more to do with poverty and, those kinds of struggles that students are dealing with.
Last fall at Oak Park High School, they elected a transgender as for the homecoming queen.
Yeah.
And, of course, that was a student effort. And but the state of Missouri wasn't too happy about that.
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? I think it would be great if some people in the state of Missouri, in the administration and in the legislature, would do their homework and connect with some of the students and, maybe ask some of the students at Oak Park, what was this all about? I mean, I think it would be very enlightening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen, so many changes just in the last 10 years. I have a student that is transgendered that has told me about freshman year in high school that they had to get a note from the nurse. This was, 10 years ago. I had to get a note from the nurse because that was the only bathroom they could use. And now, at least that barrier has been eliminated within Shawnee Mission. But that's just a barrier within the school. So are you saying that the schools are dealing with this better than outside of the schools?
My instinct is that they are, because they know these students on a personal level. And, they know that so-and-so is not a threat to anybody, and that the students don't regard their peer as a threat. And, the more familiar we get, the less threatening someone seems. Which
Absolutely.
is why I'm saying it. It would behoove some of our elected officials to get to know some of these students.
Absolutely. It would be great to have them come visit classrooms, because I would think that for a large population, they don't see the transgender issue they certainly don't see it as a threat, but a lot of them don't even see it as an issue. Now that being said, certainly transgender students are still dealing with barriers and obstacles and challenges that need to be addressed, but we're taking baby steps.
Over time, whenever we've gone through these different times of gay, lesbians, same-sex marriage, and whatever we're talking about, people who are, quote, different, the students have taken charge.
I love those stories about the students taking charge. But, I think reporters have to be conscious of this other level where there is still intolerance,
Yes.
and there's still going to be bullying in the schools. And, you don't want to just think everything's rosy, because there's been some stories about some courageous students taking charge. I also, I wish I could have heard the most recent interview that you just did with the transgender teacher, because I think that's another thing for journalists to look for, is staffing issues. Because, we know a few things in education, and one is that, students do best when there are teachers and staffers like them in a school, right?
Absolutely.
And that goes across, racial lines. And, I know I've written about the struggles to get Latina teachers in the classrooms. I think it would be great to have recruiting for LGBTQ teachers in the classrooms, but I think there'd be quite the backlash to that kind of public appeal.
Well, we've had this discussion before that, I have a close friend who teaches that 20 years ago she was not comfortable being out as a gay teacher. But now it is, she's very out, very open, and I think having that type of a role model in the classroom is important. I mean, we know that there are enough of our students that are gay or transgender that to have somebody that they can relate to is helpful. It certainly helps them just being a better learner. But just again, going back to our classrooms is kind of the oasis that they can exist in.
Yes. There's a big push in education reporting to get reporters to be student-centered. So, it's just important to get to know those students and also not to put them in a box. I mean, I imagine that most transgender students do not want themselves profiled as victims. They are just people.
Right. Right.
They are students. And so, to look at it that way is important. Another push in education reporting is to make your reporting and your material relevant to students and families, relevant to, how can my reporting help this student and this family have the best educational experience possible. And I think, you can do that with the transgender community. are there resources to help navigate a particular school system? Are there places to go? Are there advocates? Are there experts? That would be useful to families.
It is interesting because, occasionally I hear people will say, because I talk to people about the transgender community, and some people will go, well, it's really costing a lot of money for the school district to for same-sex bathrooms, as an example.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a change, and it's costing a lot of money. And my response normally is, well, when we need a new soccer field because of one reason, we certainly do that, and without a lot of falderall.
School districts should thank the transgender community for the bathroom issue. Because, school bathrooms have been a nightmare since time immemorial. All kinds of stuff goes on in them. They're unsupervised places. It's a mess. If we could just have bathrooms like at KCI, the all-gender bathrooms, floor-to-ceiling stalls, a common area to wash your hands. It's out in the open. Teachers can observe what's going on. That would be a great service, not only to transgender students, but to education.
And
K-12
that's what we've done
education.
at Shawnee Mission. You've seen that? Yeah. And so that's
Right.
really been nice. And I've mentioned this before. I grew up on the West Coast, and that's how everything is on the West Coast.
Yeah.
The Midwest is just a little behind.
I'm sure, but
Big surprise.
Yeah, if we, that we should be grateful to the transgender community for bringing reforms to the school bathroom issue.
Barb Shelly, thank you for joining us today on TranScript.
We've covered a lot of ground here today. Jean and I are going to ponder this for a little bit, and we'll be back in a minute to talk about what we learned. It was great having Barb Shelly on. I think one of the things that really stuck out to me is that she kept coming back to the reporting should be student-centered. Talking with the students about what's going on just gives a better idea of the entire picture. It's unfiltered compared to what you get maybe from teachers or administrators.
Right.
It's a different perspective.
Right, because for sure, kids are going to say what they believe and what they want to say and not sugarcoat it as much as you might get when you're talking to an administrator or a board member, or and I think that she's had a lot of experience in education, and she definitely leaned on the importance of student interaction, working with students, communicating with students, especially as a reporter. And the other thing is that I kind of picked up from her was that she really likes what she does.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that she had that sense of hope that we have seen from folks
Right.
that things are not solved, that,
Right.
that the trans community has obstacles and barriers, but it's getting better, and it's certainly getting better, at least maybe starting with the schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's this episode of TranScript. TranScript is produced by Sam Zeff and is a part of the Archiver series of podcasts.
Make sure to subscribe to Archiver wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, I'm Gene Johnson.
And I'm Brad Tennant, and we'll see you on the next TranScript.